Here's what we're going to do. Well, let's back up here a little bit. Back out a little bit so you can see it.
Ah, pretty. Look at that.
Little three-cornered box.
Nice.
They're actually a lot simpler to do than what you would imagine. It just takes a little bit of patience and practice. The one I'm going to do tonight's a little bit smaller. This one is about started out with about 4 inches of a cube, I think. The one I have for tonight is a 3-inch cube. The important part on these is that it is a cube. These measurements need to be as close to exact as what you can get them. If you're going to make it into a lidded box, if you're just going to make a little three-cornered bowl, it really won't matter. But if it's going to be a box with the rim, it needs to be very close. And I'll show you where it shows up in the weirdest place or in a different place. No drive center, just putting the corner into the headstock. There is no point in this drive or this live center. It is a cone. It's the one-way style live center. So it's going to be held between centers just like that. It's really pretty simple. Bring the tool rest up relatively close because these corners go away in a hurry. And they're close enough. Come in maybe a little bit more. You can check them, use your finger or a pencil, and just put your fingernail on the corner of that, come around, make sure the three corners meet, and they do, which they should. If it's not, you can adjust this. You can wiggle it around a little bit here and there. Um, Other than that, it's pretty simple. It's like I say, it's not a hard project, but it's a project that has a tendency to scare a lot of people because you can't see a lot. So our speed is going to be slow to start. As you can see, we have a lovely U in the middle of it. That's the first thing we want to get rid of. Like I say, we're going to turn these pretty quick. If you're not comfortable with that, then slow it down. You got to have better tool control and things like that. I turn relatively fast, so we're at 1900 right now, just to get rid of the corners. Just some nice little light cuts coming in from the end. Don't go the other way, it'll tip it out. And ideally what I'm going to do is actually make it into sort of a cylinder. So we'll come in a little bit from this end, flip over and come in a little bit from the other end. At this point, we're not removing much material, but we also don't want to be overly aggressive because we do not have a lot of drive on it to be aggressive. If you get too aggressive, it's not no big deal because it's not going to go anywhere. It just stops spinning. Kind of one of them things that it just stops. So we're sort of to a cylinder, not being very friendly there for some reason. That's part of taking just the corners off. So now we'll take it down a little bit smaller, a little bit more speed. It's in balance to start with, so you could run this as fast as what you possibly want to run it. I also want it cut cleanly up, especially up here. This end will be the top. So now that we've speeded up, slowed our progress down, there's still a little bit of a chip there. But that part will go away. The chips, the place that I'm more concerned at would be from there up, so that we don't have anything torn up here. So a little bit of grain that's standing up on the one corner, but not too bad. Doing these kind of projects, the wood needs to be uh, straight grained. I've never tried one in curly. In a curly grain, it would probably be a nightmare because as soon as you put it on corner to corner, you're no longer doing spindle work or bowl work. It's somewhere down in between that lovely little gray area. We'll take it down just a little bit more. At the top, we're going to start to make it curve towards the middle, keeping our cuts light. Not really towards the middle, towards the bottom. We're not going to go real far at this point in making a shape because we need to know where our tenant's going to be. So I have a divider set. I'm going to use the Vicmark VM100 chuck. So 1 3/8 is somewhere up in that area. So if I put a mark across there, it doesn't need to be a pretty mark. It's just an idea where it's going to be. So I have an idea of where that tenant is going to be. It's also going to tell me where my feet are going to be. So at this point, I'm going to spin around here a little bit and I'm going to start making the tenant. I'm going to go in first with a straight parting tool, and then I will use one that's grounded and angled to match the dovetail jaws. You kind of have to be a little bit gentle when you're doing this part of it. Remember, I said we're not going across grain, it's somewhere in between. So when I get up to my line, then we're going to go in about the diameter of the tailstock is going to get us close to where we need to be. We're also looking to see whether we're getting somewhere close to a solid surface to grab hold of, which is the important part. This is one of those times that you're really tempted to do the right-handed and tool and left-hand in this, but as you can see, I'm not necessarily going in there very straight. So it would be probably not be a good idea to do it. So that probably gives us a complete circle, I think. Yep, it doesn't matter that there's still a little bit there. All I'm interested in is that little bit at the top. So we're a solid 1/8 of an inch, more than enough to grab a hold of with the chuck. We're less than the calipers, which is okay. There's there's a little wiggle room there. Ideally, this surface here should be flat or even slightly concave. The flat works well in this situation. Leave a little bit extra room in there. Also a little dovetail. This parting tool is actually ground at the angle of the chuck. Okay, now we know where we're going to hold it to. We can go back to doing more shaping before we remove any more material down there. This is also another one of them places you shouldn't move the tool rest anyhow, but everybody does it. This is one of the places you don't want to do it because you get your fingers anywhere near those corners. Might be a short day in the shop, to say the least. And you can tell it wants to fight you in certain directions, more so than the others. And now we're going to start bringing our curve in. We can go the whole way in as long as we flip over and make sure we're at 90 degrees when we touch that corner. Once again, we're not totally worried about the shape because we're only going to do a little bit of this. We're going to take it down a little. No, that's where it chipped a little bit on me. We're not locked in to these. That's still the flats right there. Since we got that tenon on there, we can go down a little bit further if we need to or want to. Reason we don't take more of this away at this point is because we need support, because we got to hollow the other side out. So that should be good. And it takes a second to look. Should always look. Not that it really makes any difference. That'll work. Yep, that's fine. So we'll go back with our parting tool. We're not going to part this off. Don't get excited. We're going to take it down fairly small. And then we're going to give it a really nice taper. Something like that. And then we can cut it free. Just use a little, I just use a little Japanese pull saw. That's all it takes. Get rid of that. Don't let that hit the floor. As you can see, there's a point sticking up. It's not very friendly when you step on it. So they tell me.
Sounds like experience.
I try and catch every little piece like that because I always step on them. I mean, I have a very soft pad underneath my feet, but one with a point on would not be a great situation. So now we can put
Sir,
it duck. Like I say, I wasn't concerned because we still have an eighth of an inch gap there. So we could even go even smaller than that. But I'm going to bring the tailstock back up. I'm going to loosen it up just a little bit. Bring that in tight. Tighten it back up. Now, once again, we sort of need to know about how thick we're going to go. We'll leave it thick just so that we don't get too carried away. And mark a couple corners and maybe or maybe not be able to see them.
Kirk, for doing your base there, did you just do that based on a ratio, or is it just based on eye from making multiple vessels
Just
like this?
basically based on I actually sort of went down a little bit too far. I'll show you how to correct that once we get to the bottom. Because this now, if you hollow this part out down here, which we will at a later stage, as you can see, it's going to sit down here on a point rather than on this point up here. So you just make a tiny little cut across here to make it flat. And I usually do too, because I don't know if that other one did or not. Because if they don't, yeah, see if I flip this one over and look at the bottom of this one, I've taken a tiny little cut off, so now it's still sitting on 3 points, but it's more substantial.
Right on.
Okay. That way you can make the foot as small as you want too by doing that.
Oh, good point.
Because to me, they don't really look right if this foot would be basically the same size as what this is. So it should be more decorative, I guess you would want to call it. Once again, we always spin things, slow it down, bring it up to speed. Not perfectly centered. It doesn't matter because we're going to recut everything on the outside anyhow. Simple little cut straight towards center. Don't pick the gouge up. I'm sliding back on the bevel. That's where some of the little chatter is going to come back. I can half see my line, and I actually think I'm getting fairly close to it. Yep. That's why you mark all three. You can sort of get a little bit of a ghost image as to what's there. So now we can go in a little bit underneath. Get rid of this. You practice your little toothpicks if you wanted to. Eventually it'll just fall off. Hopefully it just falls off. I every once in a while I get carried away and I will hollow these down further yet, so that becomes a longer one. It fell back there, so we're all right. It's not on the floor. And if you knock them, if you just back off the tailstock and just touch it to break it off, every once in a while, them little buggers will go down inside of there and it becomes this little missile going across the room. So be aware of what things can do, I guess you'd say, or might do. Then we're going to switch over. We're going to hollow this thing out. I might have to move a camera, so we have to move. Actually,
No, it looks good.
looks good. Okay. So we're still at 3/8 of an inch there. We need to get rid of some material because now we're going to create the bowl part of it. We'll get a little bit of the middle out. Let's say we have a little bit of room to move. My body, how I do this stuff, do any of this stuff like this, my right hip is against the lathe, so I am looking straight down at this piece. So my left eye is over here, my right eye is on this side of it, and you can see the wall. I will have to bring the light around once we get to the part where it gets thin. So right now I have that 3/8 of an inch line that we're going to go to. Stop and see where we're at. I'm sure we're still plenty thick. Yeah, plenty thick. So we're still, I was, like I say, I was able to still see that line. And we have a curve going across here that should match, that will match this curve. So this shouldn't, at least when I looked earlier, it didn't do too bad as far as, you know what, I did that wrong. How about that? That wipes it out.
If you need the light, go ahead and use the light, Kurt. I know what it's like when you're trying to
We'll
hollow
try it.
and see.
It's really more the light on the left side of it, which giving me that, but not wiping it out.
Yeah, you can really see the tool going in there on the left-hand camera. That's great.
Well, yeah, that's what makes these fun. Everybody's saying, well, I've started teaching classes at Woodcraft and trying to get people to look somewhere other than what down at the tool to see what the tool's doing. I'm like, there's other
Right.
places to look. Well, this is one of them. I mean, I can see the tool right straight through the piece anyhow as it spins. As you can see, we're not deep enough, but we'll make this up here closer to what we want, which in my opinion is about 1/4 of an inch. And try and make it even for that first section. I think it's pretty good. Probably a little, maybe a little fat on the quarter, but we'll come back and trim some more of that off. We need some more room to move. This is also the 40 degree gap, 40 the 40-degree gouge, which it does not like to go straight into end grain.
Yeah, I made a comment about your 40 degree earlier, saying that you were making it sing.
The other place that I can look as the turner, if I look straight down, I can now see looks like there should be a solid line, which there pretty much is a solid line coming around. I want a little bit of room, 1/8 to 3/16 in there for the lid. So now as you can see, now we're pretty consistent. It's a little jagged right there. The other thing you got to watch with this kind of stuff, these can be very, very dangerous when you're turning them. All these edges right here are extremely sharp. Even though this is still saw cut out here and here, these are very, very sharp. So any little oopsie doopsie and you're going to be bleeding. That's pretty much as far as you can go with a 40-degree gouge. It actually tore a big chunk out in there. The 40-40 gouge is fine for certain things. As far as I'm concerned, it's not the go-to bowl gouge, especially for somebody that's just starting out. Because they will not go around this corner here. The other thing, his hand has to stay on this side of the tool rest, no matter what. So we can clean up our area down here with a parting tool. We want a nice little shoulder here. Does not have to be very big. 1/8 of an inch is more than enough. We can cheat and use our parting tool and give us another place to sit our bowl gouge on. The other thing I like to do with them is I'm going to pick up my spindle gouge and I'm going to come down this wall and I'm going to go into that corner and I'm going to put a teeny tiny little V groove down in there. It's just another place of interest, I would call it. For somebody that, especially for somebody that doesn't know anything about wood turning, take these to a craft show. They're not a great seller to start with. I can tell you that much. They were the first handful that I made, they sold right away, and then you make a bunch more and then nothing, and they don't sell.
Huh. I wouldn't have thought that.
Now, actually, the ones that are left are, as far as I'm concerned, most wood turners would think they're really pretty because they're spalted maple. I had some spalted maple that was very, very, it's spalted and it's really, really lovely spalted. And it's very solid because you can't do this kind of work with stuff that's not solid. I've tried it. I've tried it with some box
Right.
elder and things like that, and it just does not work. So that's probably deep enough for the bowl because we're not trying to make a deep bowl. So if we did our little eyeball test on the corner, I'm down almost to this groove now. And we're going to take that further down, but we also have to keep in mind, we're going to make this shape on the outside match
Match.
or thereabouts. Now I've left a little dimple in there. It's not really very, very pretty. So here's where you can be really, really brave. And you can pick up the big monster bowl scraper. That is a traditional scraper. It's not a negative rake scraper. And just go in there and carefully try not to send it flying across the room. gonna be a real pain because I dug a little hole in the bottom.
Oh, you got this all day long.
Now this one is not is it's made for bigger bowls. So I'll just go back in with the gouge. A lot of times if I have too many ripples in there, I will take and use either the negative rake or a traditional scraper and go in there and clean them up and then make one final little pass. And that way everything should be clean. And don't do that. That little ticking was me coming around just a little bit too far and it started to touch them. That'll work. That'll sand out. It's not really a dimple, it's a tit sticking up, so to speak. So first question anybody's going to have is how do you sand that, right?
Very
Well,
carefully.
not really. Power sand it. You just stick your drill in there. It actually will work. This is 2 3/8. It would actually work better for with a 2-inch one. You can go in there. Don't spin it on the lathe. It'll spin itself. Put your hand on the chuck and let it float around in your hand, just like that. It's actually very simple. You can sand it the whole way through. The only thing is on the inside, you're going to have to. Here's where you need to have clean cuts. There's little ripples in there, but you're going to have to take a piece of hand sandpaper. That's because I have not yet to figure out any way to power sand something like that. Believe me, I've tried a couple different methods. The only thing you can do is hand sand these. You can figure out which way the grain's going and sand with the grain. It'll actually go a little bit easier, but they get hand sanded. That whole area right through there. The rest of that gets power sanded. So that's pretty much the inside for this general purpose. That's the inside complete. If I was doing it as a finished piece, this would be totally finished sanded in here, complete. Usually you'll sand those. Those you can come back after, but this would be completely sanded in there because this is really the only time you're going to be able to have good access to that, at least the way that I do it. I'm sure there's probably lots of other people would have other ideas on how they would like to do something like this. For me, um, you could probably, and I was just looking at that earlier tonight, I'm like, you could probably just continue on with the outside shape here and continue running that down, this down to whatever thickness you want down in here. But now you have to work around the chuck. And I don't, I just don't, I don't like to do it that way. I'm not saying it couldn't be done. I'm sure it could be if you were careful. A little jam chuck, a little jam piece. Actually, if I was doing that as a finished piece, I would probably go right to one of the small vacuum chucks as my jam chuck so that I could, when I was ready for it, just turn the vacuum on and finish taking the bottom of this off. I won't be able to take all this off tonight because I still need to be able to get a hold of it to be able to sand it. Or I've
Okay.
spent an hour, but I would do that under vacuum. I mean, it doesn't really matter. It's not a gallery kind of a piece. Um, Simple jam chuck. Your tail stack back up. This is why we tapered this. Perfect center every time. Do
There
that
you
on your
go.
bowl.
That's a good technique.
I now do that on the bowls because that little nub fits inside those chuck jaws, no matter whether it's a 100, 120, whatever size jaws it is, that always fits in there. So a little tape, basically a little Morse taper Centers things up quite nicely, usually, although the one I had earlier didn't center up very well. I got this one moved around a little bit. Close enough. Once again, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. If this is a little bit out around in here, which it shows that it is, who cares? Because we're going to recut this. We're really not going to cut. We could probably actually come back whole way back up to the top on this one because they're a little bit thicker than what I normally maybe would do, but that's neither here nor there. Here's one of the places if you don't like to turn at a higher rate of speed, then don't. The bottom you're going to almost have to a little bit. Let's see how bad it chatters up here. It wants to talk to you, so there's nothing supporting that material up there. That's not a good idea to take a whole lot more off up there at this point. Do it on the first stages. This is actually also another place that's a 40-degree gouge. If I remember right, I think we'll work just fine on this. Gets the wings back out of the road for you. You can also do it strictly with the spindle gouge, a 1/2 inch spindle gouge, which is how I will finish getting down in there.
Kurt, can we just use the overhead camera?
Yes, sorry,
That'll
you
work.
got it.
Thank you.
I need you watching on Saturday night to keep up with me. I forget to do that all the time. I went and
Be
sharpened
more than
tools.
happy. Be more than happy to help you out on that. Just give me advance notice.
So now we're gonna, even at this point, since we have this angled, we can go back to whatever we want because there's still going to be a point down here. We could make them smaller and smaller if we wanted to. They're still about 3/8 of an inch, so they need to come down a little bit. I'm going to switch over to the spindle gouge. I don't trust I can't really see the bottom wing when it flips over. And I know very good and well that it will catch quickly. Just takes a little bit more time to do it with the spindle gouge. Time well spent, well worth the extra effort. We keep digging into that corner a little bit each way. So we're happy with our result. Happy with step back, look at the shape. If we wanted to and needed to, we could stop, back this off, and you could caliper that to make sure, especially since we have it in this fashion between centers, it's going to come back to where it was at. So we could go in here and use lovely little calipers. That's probably one of the best investments. I was down in Tennessee to a symposium in January, and Laurent, who is Trent Bosch's son-in-law, now they've come up with these little mini calipers for lidded boxes and little hollow forms. Well, I'll tell you what, I've used this thing more in other places than what he designed it for. So we're still probably 1/2 inch out in that area. You really can't tell where the bottom is at. The bottom is still above this area here. So we know we can take it down. We can make our curve go down further yet, which is the ideal situation as far as I'm concerned. The smaller it becomes, the more interesting, eye-catching it will become. Always keep an eye on where your fingers are at, where your fingers are going, because you're watching what you're doing as far as the tool goes, not really watching where your fingers are at. And you know you're safe as long as your hands stay on this side of the tool, right? And we're over at 90 degrees. This cherry will actually burn. You can see some little bit of a light line in there. What I'm looking for is a nice crisp, clean corner in there. Excuse me. A little bit of torn grain on this side of it. I rubbed that bevel just a little bit hard in there. So I should have cleaned that up. Yeah. And I don't
Nice.
necessarily worry about that. I'm going to sand down into there. The other thing that makes these, I could do that right now. The other thing that makes these, especially in the, like in just the sort of the, I guess you want to call it the plain wood, the cherry, and where really any of them, is take and I normally would do this after I sanded. Take a burning wire, go down in that groove, and burn a line in it. It's a very simple thing. And now I don't have to sand down in that corner either. Because that's guitar string, so it actually cuts into there. So it actually make a cut line in there. So when this is finished, it leaves that black line behind, and people will walk up there and look at that all day long, and they stand there. You can always tell when it's somebody that's maybe knows a little bit about wood turning or is a wood turner. I've had a couple of them come up and ask me, "That's two pieces, right?" No, it's not. It's just one piece. Well, there's a line, there's a line in the middle. I said, "That's a burn line." They're like,
Right.
"Oh." And then they stand there puzzled. I'm like, would you like me to explain to you how it's done? They're like, well, yeah, that would be nice.
Very cool.
So this would be sanded. This is actually sandable by hand up here. You could power sand some of this. I'm not going to do much of it. Get enough of a cold or something or other, but as long as you're gentle up here, maybe leave your speed up higher than what you would normally sand at. You just gently go across it. And that will clean that right up. Much easier than any other way, as far as I'm concerned. But it is hand sandable. I normally would sand it about 500 or 600 RPMs. I'm going to say for these, I would sand a little bit higher, but you can hold the sandpaper in your hand, put it in your hand like that so that your fingers are behind, and you can go right on across that. Just give your fingers a nice little massage. In order to get down into the groove, I cut my sandpaper that it's actually pretty small. So I fold it in half. When I'm doing something like that, I'm really kind of vigilant on where that corner is at. The two cut edges together, we can go down in that corner. If you're not comfortable doing that, then put it on a little block of wood or something like that, a little popsicle stick or something. And you can get right down in there, sand it the whole way. You can do the same thing on the other side. I reach over I do it from the top because I can generally see more of what I'm doing. When you grab the corner, and then you would sand it completely that way. You did a good job. Of course, that Jerry burned a little bit down there in there, but they generally don't take real long to sand, especially because, like I say, you can power sand the whole way down into that area. So you really only have this little V groove down there. Like I say, if you don't want to stick your fingers in there, I don't have a problem. I mean, yeah, it's not probably not a great idea to do what I was doing because you saw I hit the corner out here. So I could just as easily hit the corner with my thumb or something like that. So, tongue depressor, something thin, wrap your sandpaper around it and you get right down into that corner and it's sanded. Same way with these up here, I would use a block of wood or excuse me. I have some sanding blocks that when it's still in this fashion, I would sand out across these because there'll be one of them. Usually only just the one is left. Yeah, the other ones have been what I do with them is run two sides through the joiner and usually then they'll go through the planer so that I have the perfect square block and then cut them off with a chop saw. So you'll have saw marks on one of them. They come off fairly easily. I'm gonna have to blow my nose a second. So now we have to finish off the bottom. We're going to bring our tool rest in. The shade on the low side. And we can go back over to probably maybe we can see that. Where we go there. I widen out a little bit. There we go. Get the double view. Um, once again, we're gonna go back and use our bowl gouge. 40° will be a little bit friendlier because it's a little with the 40° angle, I can be back in this area versus over here. I also have a small 3/8 inch bowl gouge to get into those tight places. Like I say, if I was making this as a finished piece, everything would be sanded and ready to finish outside, inside the bowl part before I got to this point. This is where it would be on for the vacuum chuck so that I can cut this off, sand the bottom and be done. Just so you have more of an idea. We don't have a vacuum chuck. Of course, like I say, everything else would be finished at this point. We would just be cutting this curve.
Real good camera views here, Kirk. Good job.
There's a dark line in there. Why is there dark? Oh, there's a pencil line. I was gonna say, I'm like, what the hell's that dark line? That's a pencil line. Like, well, that's
I put
interesting.
it there earlier.
Yeah, I know. I see that. Okay. So once again, in my opinion, these should be about the same thickness there as there. This definitely shouldn't be thinner than the top, but relatively close to the same. Once again, when I look straight down on something like this, I'm looking through the void and I can see the thickness that we have. And I said about the corners, I probably should have done them first. I'm gonna have to bring my light around maybe to get a view of it. There we go. I should have did this before it was thin. It's gonna talk to me. That's kind of doing it the brave way. The simpler way is just to sand them off because it's really sort of too thin to do what I'm doing. You can see, as you can hear, it wants to makes some noise. If I would have done that before I started hollowing any more out. Okay, so now that still leaves you a pretty sharp point out there, not a razor blade sharp point, but it also gives it a different look on the sides as well, which if you like that look, I mean, that's fine and dandy. If you don't like that look, then change it and do something a little different with it. I'll take a little bit more material off out here. So that's not quite so big as far as that flat. So there, now we're down to more of a reasonable flat. We're actually a tiny bit thinner than what we were up there, but that's neither here nor there. So you would continue close the flute to pick up the cut. It works so much better. So now you have less than 3/8 of an inch of material left. Hopefully it cut cleanly, not perfectly clean. If it doesn't, if it doesn't cut as clean as you would like it with the bowl gouge, pick up the spindle gouge. The spindle gouge will do a lot for you on some of this stuff. You just make a really nice little light cut, nice and slow. Slow and steady wins the race every day. Right to the center, and that should have cleaned that up. Majority of it. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Questions?
Nothing in the chat.
Well, then it must not be very exciting.
No, I
Okay.
think you're just covering the material extremely well.
Get that little bit puppy back out of there. So that's our bowl shape. And you got to watch with these. You can get these, I have a tendency to get these out of whack sometimes. Here's what happens. I just so happen to have one. It's actually was started out, maybe a little less than 3 inches. You can see, go back strictly overhead. You can see what happens if you don't run this curve down in. They look like they're little short and squatty or short and fat rather than more of an elegant type shape. At least that's my opinion. Um, so,
That's cool.
um, lid, and put this somewhere where I don't throw it flying across the room. I do have a little piece for a lid. The lids for these, I will not lie to you. The lids for these are actually more challenging than what you'd ever imagine.
Right?
One of the things when you do these when you do these curves in here, make sure that this is actually going more in straight and then curving once you get down to where it's going to be the bowl. If these curl in, you'll never get a lid in there. They actually look like they might even curl in a little bit. We'll find out quickly. The other thing that's kind of challenging or different, maybe I should say, not challenging. Life's a challenge, but um, is figuring out, is getting a dimension for the inside. Because you say, well, okay, let's go across, theoretically go across center. So that one point is center, and if I look across there, those 2 points sort of look like they go across center. So we're going to call it that. Drive with the left leg and don't let the right leg touch. I'll see somebody, you ought to do that for somebody that has never turned a piece of wood in their life. They're like, and I go, well, I'll hand it to them. You want to do that? No, I'll watch you do that. But I told him, I said, it'll go across, it'll fly across the room. It's kind of exciting. So square it around. Come from both sides so you don't screw everything up. I did this ass backwards. Come to think of it. See if we can get it to fit first. So we'll leave our line. Check and see if we have a fit. It goes pretty close to being, that was actually a pretty accurate measurement, but it's, you can hear the squeak. It's too tight. These I do not want to be tight. These are actually really a loose fit lid is much better by virtue of wood moves. So, because I had one of them, one of the original ones I did, I had at a craft show, and my daughter was with me and said, "Hey, this guy come over here," and he said that lid won't come off. And we were like, yeah, it kind of swelled up, you know. I mean, I got it
Right?
off, and then it was okay, but certainly don't want to sell something to somebody that would not be very nice. So we'll just take a little bit more off. Like I say, I'm not really concerned if they rattle a little bit. To me, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference if they do. Like I say, I did this ass backwards. I need a tenant to hold on to.
I did the same thing on my lid there 3 weeks ago also.
So, like I say, some of this stuff that I'm doing with teaching wise, it's you don't want to be rude to people. You sort of have to try and make it as simple as you possibly can.
Right?
So we'll get it down on the chuck. Now we can go back to there.
What kind of wood is this, Kurt?
This is maple. This is actually a piece of curly maple. So we need, yeah, we need to know how big the tenant's going to be, or the recess. Um, hmm. Guess I should have measured that ahead of time. Would have been made more sense. Wonders of watching Alex Snodgrass. Rare earth magnet, piece of shrink wrap or shrink tubing. Pencil never gets lost anymore. So I'm thinking, I think, another thing, how do we know where the center point is at? If we take our pencil and run towards the center, it leaves us a little itty bitty white dot in the middle. Anybody watching Richard Raffin would say, oh yeah, he showed that. Like Yeah. One of them things, another one of those things that's not right. I had that wrote down somewhere. Yeah, it'll work for this. That's probably too big. Somewhere thereabouts. Going to create a small recess. Chuck, get rid of some of the center part. You can even make it a little decorative. Leave a little V groove or something in there. So you have a little bit of a visual interest on the inside. Make sure this is either flat or slightly concave to the middle. Once again, sanded, finished, sanded and finished, or at least sanded, complete. Make sure you clean the dust out of that groove, especially if you're using the dovetail jaws. It may not cooperate very well with you. I used to, and I'm probably the one that I had over here, probably has a little. Sometimes I would go back out here and put a little bit of a lip, a shoulder, which you could do just so they sit down inside a little bit further. Nice little shallow recess, shallow little lip. And of course, we need our piece to make sure that all this fits. It actually feels like it's tight, but I don't know where. You can spend more time making a lid for these things than you can making the box. Trust me. And that goes the whole way in. It was just being weird. So I should have, I was in that position too. Trim off or round over, I should say, more knots and trim it off. Knock that sharp corner off. Of course, you would take care of that sharp corner whenever you sanded to go with it. You can make this into something that doesn't look like it's not supposed to be there. Nice little light cuts. Here's where if you wanted to be creative and brave, good place to practice, I guess you'd say, too. If anybody, like say, anybody watching Richard Raffin or those guys, there is your traditional scraper. What's he called? It's a radius. It's not square. Tool rest
Like a
needs to come up.
refiner.
Yeah, that's what that Thomas guy calls it as a
Yeah,
refiner.
a refiner. Almost stuff.
Yeah. So that right there is $15 to $20 on Amazon. It takes a whole lot of grinding to grind a tang down. The cutoff wheel will cut it. So you can cut the majority. You could draw it on there with a Sharpie or whatever. Cut the majority of it off with a cutoff wheel. Little cuts across and then come back. And then, a bunch of grinding. But they do work. They work extremely well, actually. But they will grab. You do something it doesn't like, and it will tell you in a heartbeat. So that gives us a little bit nicer, cleaner look in there. It also saves you a whole lot of sanding. If it didn't cut it cleanly, which it didn't totally cut it cleanly, you can also flip this up on its side and come back across. And then it will cut it really, really cleanly. I use this,
About what
go
about
ahead.
what angle you got that cut at, ground at?
Ground at, I actually had to measure it. Richard and them talk about 45 degrees. I'm like, no, that sounded too much to me. Um, actually, wait a minute. I'll let you all answer that. 'Cause I had one of those moments. Well, I can just measure it. When I was watching, back when all the COVID crap was going on, I watched several demonstrations with Glenn Lucas, and he has a little setup jig. Of course, all those guys have to have a setup jig.
Oh yeah, of course.
And what they like, I think I had it set for with his, just by virtue of I can use that jig to set it. Because I personally don't think there's any difference with this angle. It's still just a sharp edge. Um, and all those professional people that want to talk about, well, the burr only lasts a couple seconds. Well, maybe you should go back to traditional because that burr lasts a long time on those. Why is, I don't know, but it does. You do not go back and sharpen these very often. And if you're watching
No,
either one of them, a little diamond hone, and you can bring a tiny little burr back up and it cuts like a dream. As long as you don't, as long as this end is lower than that end, it's wonderful.
yeah,
Because
presenting it at a negative rate.
you're presenting it at a negative angle. But there's certain places that it doesn't matter. Like when you do a lidded box, I have some that are square, sort of square, but they're still radius. They're not it's not perfectly square. It's laying over here. If you like to do lidded boxes and things like that, this is a square, what they would consider a square ended scraper. No, I'm showing you in the wrong place. A square ended
Yeah,
scraper, but it has just a slight radius from side to side so that you can't engage because this is 1 inch wide or 25 millimeters, which is pretty close to 1 inch. But this will go right straight down the wall of a lidded box, and I will let my students use this. This will go along to class this Saturday because I'm doing a lidded box class. It has to be above center and a fair amount above center so that the bottom edge of it doesn't drag. And it will cut as clean as you can get straight down the wall of a lidded box. It does a really nice job on that. But nonetheless, okay. Last step because we're not doing a finial. I had to change chuck draws and I don't have anything ready for that. Everybody knows how to do a finial.
but not like Kirk does.
That's just a copy of Cindy Drozdes. That's all that is. Make something up, you know.
Yeah, I've never done that.
Mine aren't exactly like hers. They're they're relatively close. Mine all look pretty much the same though. I don't know, it's just my lack of imagination, probably. Her lid is pretty, it's pretty basic. It fits. We can actually get rid of some material. We started with probably 15/16. This is actually dimensional lumber. We got to bring it down a little bit. You go with the Jimmy Clues philosophy and say if we split this in thirds, so 2/3 to 1/3, something like that. Roman Oji, the bowl gouge, your swept back bowl gouge has a curve to it already. that just very easily makes a curve. Makes that curve go up to there. It's gonna be looking weird because it's got to get thinner than what it is. Then come back up over here to the middle. Make this curve come down across to this curve. And you have a very simple Roman OG type of a curve. Clean it up a little bit, sand it, and away you go. Of course, this is still way too thick. These lids want to be fairly thin because we left less than about a quarter of an inch up there. So theoretically this outside edge that would be up here would only want to be about a quarter of an inch. So if we take it down to there right off the bat, then we can go down to it. Not too fast. This one, that 1/3, 2/3 thing, it does work very, very well for doing an OG type curve. Something that pretty much everybody can do. Step back and look, and you can see see where there's some little high points. And I'm really just making sort of scraping cuts. The other thing, if I'm going to put a finial on here, I'm going to leave a tiny little bit of a flat in the middle. Not big enough for the finial to sit on. Once again, see that is, well, I don't know if the camera probably won't pick that. Well, you can see a little bit. You can see the lines. It is a curly maple.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's coming through. Especially right there.
But once again, once you would get it to that point, it's not necessarily super cleanly cut out there. I mean, it's kind of sandable. You could pick up a spindle gouge, a bowl gouge. This just happens. This is a little bowl gouge. And we could just make one clean cut. First of all, the profile is already there, but we make one nice clean cut and we're done. You could also do that with the traditional scraper as well. It will give you that clean of a cut if you have a little bit of patience and practice with them a little bit. So we're down to about a quarter of an inch. Of course, you would something like I just knocked the corners off. I'm going to sand that round. It's more, what do you would call it? Oh, yeah, don't turn it that way. Safer to do it that way. Just as easy and really safer to do it that way. So there we go.
Oh, look at that.
So let's go back there. That would make more sense. So that's our little lid box.
Cool.
If I
We
had
should get you to throw some dye on that maple.
I
You
can do
got
that.
time. You got
I got
time.
that. What color? Oh, you want to see how I do it? Okay. I'm not a
It happens to me all the time, Kirk. I understand.
I'm not a professional when it comes to that dyeing thing. You see whether they're having gloves over here.
Billy, why you always throw me under the bus?
Yeah, go get a glove.
You know, I like my collar on wood like that.
So do I. I wish I could get tons of it. I have some more blanks over in the other room that are like 1.5 squares or something like that. So I need to make some ice cream scoops by I think June. I think somebody wants one. One of my wife's friends wants one. Get rid of this. Well, that's not been sanded. That's not very good.
Yeah, got to sand it a little bit there.
Just a little bit. Sand it with 220. So I'm
All
gonna
it
get
takes.
a little 220. 320. Not really great practice of sand with gloves on though. But I always do it. I do it when I'm messing with the dyes. And it's one of the things that I try and that's one of the things that I emphasize to the people that come and take a class is no jewelry, no gloves. Actually,
Yes.
I had a young girl walk out of my class because I wouldn't let her use her gloves. She was like 14 years old. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't, I wasn't rude to her. That's what I told the owner of the store. He said, it's your class. You do whatever you want. As long as you're not too rude to somebody. I'm like, well, I wasn't. I said, because personally, they all knew her, knew the girl, homeschooled. So, that's mama's precious little baby. If
Uh-huh.
mama was there, that's the golden rule is if you're under 18, mom or dad's going to be there and there's a chair, have a nice 3 hour sit or whatever we're doing
Right.
because you're not leaving. I'm not a babysitter. Um, but yeah, she's like, well, the other guy let me do it. The guy who was teaching the class. I'm like, well, I can't tell you, I can't speak for what these other older gentlemen did or didn't do. I said, but
Right.
this is my class and we're not doing it. Alcohol-based dyes, Jimmy Clue's specials trick, spray the wood first,
Yep.
wipe it off.
Spray the wood with alcohol?
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's an alcohol dye.
If I was going to use water-based dyes, I would probably do the same thing with the water-based. That's kind of just me. These are chestnut spirit stains. Kind of too lazy to mix my own. I do have some that I have that are mixed. First color, black.
Could we see the tailstock camera, please?
That would be better. That would look much better. See, Dane
Thank you.
sidetracked me. Dane sidetracked me.
Sorry.
We'll blame it on
Sorry,
him.
I was typing. Sorry. I would have caught
That's
that.
fine.
My bad.
That's fine.
That's an impressive black. That's really good.
Not as impressive as you would think. Certain woods, yes. Other woods, no. It's not black enough. Well, as I spin it around, it's a camera, you can see that. That's not a light reflection. That's light color in the wood there. So if this was a piece that I was going to do the grain fill with, it's not black enough. The color of the wood still comes through.
That's why I like Speedball Super Black India ink.
Right. That stuff that does really well as far as to do the grain fill. And when it comes to that, I'm lazy anyhow. I just use trans tint dye in some Zinsser seal coat shellac. And I can spray a nice coat of shellac, simple airbrush coat of shellac on that piece of wood. It's black and it's sealed all in one shot. So we went to black, cut it back. It does, it's not friendly to your sandpaper because there is a little bit of shellac in chestnut stains. They call them stains or dyes. Or dye-based stain. So we'll sand it back. So I went with 220 to 320. I'm trying to get it lighter and lighter. We have dark areas, light areas. We could even go a little bit lighter, dark or more. Now they made me do this. This piece doesn't really have enough curl in it, I don't think.
Oh, you'll bring it out.
But it might still show through. So we've left some dark areas and some light areas. Now what color?
Let's see. You started with black. Let's go with a blue,
Dark blue, light blue.
Light blue,
light blue.
please.
I don't have a really, really, really light blue, but or do I? Actually,
The spirit stain royal blue is pretty good.
yes. But when you buy all the spirit stains, actually, I should have bought another bottle of white. 'Cause you can mix their colors. So we have the royal blue. Show over here, the royal blue versus royal blue with a bunch of white in it. So I was going more for a baby blue kind of look. So we'll see whether this does anything. I think this is actually too light. Yeah, it's not going to do anything for it. Too light. I think that's why it was
Good
still
thing
up. I think that was still why
you
it's up
got
on the
royal
shelf.
blue.
And also, when it comes to blue, what's the other one I have? I have some of the artisan stain from Craft Supply, but I think that blue, I think is dark. So we'll do royal blue. I think we should have sanded back further.
I could see the light shift.
Yep.
Yeah, but not as, it left too big of, there's too big of black areas in it.
Yep.
One of the things with playing with these dyes, it's always good to play with little pieces like this, something that's not going to break the bank or whatever. It's like, just cut it back off, sand it back off,
Right.
or probably the easier one to do on something like this, since it's just a play piece, would be to get the tool rest back out.
Uh-huh. Gouge.
Yeah, we'll go back to the scraper. And now you would think, well, we're going to do over, but as you can see, there's still places that are blue that got left behind.
Right.
So now we can go and come back here, paper towel. Skip the black. The black works really well if it's really, really curly and will just leave you little bits of black. But not always in the other way around. So we'll go back and put some royal blue in there. This piece definitely has some places that you can see as I spin it around. It wants to soak it in there, and not elsewhere. Careful with what you do with the paper towels. They're all laying right there in a pile. I will open them up and lay them over the side of the trash can, or take them out to the fire pit and light a match to them. They dry very quickly, laying over the garbage can. So it's got a little bit of chatoyancy to it. You go through
Yeah,
a ton of,
we can see that shimmer when you turn it.
Oh yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it's almost straight through the center.
If you had the time and and the funds, go take a class with Jimmy Clues. He is like the master at this stuff. He'd look at something and oh yeah, just do this, do that, and do this. Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, that's because you're looking at it. I'm like, not me.
Mhm.
And I've been there, I think, twice now. Second time I was there, he actually had, I said, I want to learn to use the dies more. They did have a piece of curly maple, and I made it, turned it into a nice little bowl. He said, okay, then we'll dye it. So now we've taken a lot of the blue off. So where do you want to go from there? Green, yellow?
Got some greens and yellows.
If you had the intrinsic colors available, I would want to see like something like the ruby or something on top of that.
Purple? As close as I got. I don't have a ruby.
Purple beet.
That's the water based
I
intrinsic
know what they
colors has
are.
got to, yeah. The purple is kind of bright, but hey, it'd work, I'm sure.
Go a little bit psychedelic.
Do a tie-dye effect.
Give it a second. We'll put some more on there. This is one of the things he was trying to teach me is to do some of them little. He likes to do the little. He'll do put it right on the corner and just go along and flick in some colors in certain places all around it, and it looks like. I just kind of looked at him and went, well, that's pretty impressive. Looks like shit to me, but spray it with the alcohol, get it good and wet, keep it spinning just by hand. All those colors will blend together. And now you have something a little bit different. And as he put it, just like I did with the first go around, if you don't like it, cut it back off and start over.
Right? It's almost like a mother of pearl.
Right. So I mean, that doesn't do much for me, but so you can make the whole thing yellow. Since we messed around with the yellow, because now we'll have some yellows and greens, which will bring out some of the chatoyancy too. And of course, while that's still wet, you could go back after it with something else. And there's nothing says that you have to go the whole way in. You could just go on the outside rim or something like that and leave a little bit of something on the inside. I'm a red kind of guy. My wife kills me. She says, "Why do you gotta make everything red?" I'm like, "Because I like red." But you know, there it is something different. Um, the only thing I won't do that I did at Jimmy's, and he just loves it. He would take this right there and go, here's my lighter. Shit, light it on fire. Alcohol burns extremely quick, extremely hot. And when I got ready to start dyeing the piece, that's the first thing he did was retch in his pocket because he smokes. He said, there's my spare lighter. I'm like, you really want me to do that in your shop? He don't have, his lathes are just sitting there so all the dirt falls to the ground. He goes, well, yeah, that's what you got to do. Okay. It's kind of fun. I mean, you got to reach back here and keep that sucker spinning because alcohol, you can't see the fire, but you, buddy, you can feel her coming off. So that blue's not even open. There is another blue. Where's the other blue? My gosh. But I mean, it was fun. It was educational. There's no doubt about that. See, now To me, now we're getting too dark. But once again, we can go back. We can hit that with some alcohol, lighten things up a bit, wipe it off, and we wipe off half of what we just put on to change
Got a
the
cool
effect.
effect though.
Change the effect. And when it's wet with the alcohol, that's what it's going to finish. That's what it's going to look like with a clear finish on it. So it gives you the appearance.
That really made it pop, though. You can really see the
Yeah, it's got a
cigar.
cool effect.
Yeah, it does.
Like I say, it needs to be it. I have some of this curly maple lumber that is just curled the whole way through one side to the other. That's the stuff to play with as far as to try and dye it, as far as I'm concerned, because I'm like I say, I'm an amateur at it. But and as Jimmy said
That
when I
looks
was out
good.
there, he's like, "You don't like it, you cut it off." And he had me do the whole thing, the whole. I think it was the outside of the bowl. I don't think I did the inside. Did the outside of the bowl, put all these colors on, lit it, and this and that. He said, "Oh man, that looks pretty good. You know, here's a rattle can of lacquer. We'll spray some lacquer on. I'll change the color again." So they put, I don't know, 1 or 2 coats of lacquer on. You know, he's like, "Well, now it's going to have to dry a couple minutes. So let's go sit down here and have a cup of tea and look at it a while." And he said, then you can make your decision." Well, I sat there and looked at it, and I'm like, "I don't like it." And he went to help somebody else. I'm like, "Nope, I don't like it." I said, "He said I could cut it off. I would ever cut it off." And a couple minutes later, he turns around, he comes over, he says, "What the F did you do?" I said, "You told me I could cut it back off." I'm like, "Dude," I said, "I'm here to learn." He said, "Okay,
Right.
we get to start over." But yeah. But yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I got.
Wow, that's an outstanding demonstration tonight there, Kurt. I really appreciate it. I know the group appreciates it. So at this moment, I will open up the floor to folks to ask questions or any comments that you may have.
Great demo, Kirk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kurt. That was good.
Very good. Thank you very much.
The other thing you can play with when it comes to the dyes, I know Matt was talking about using the airbrush with the paints. The airbrushes do a good job with the dyes too. Now, I wouldn't,
Yeah.
the airbrush that he was using last week, that's not the airbrush I would use for the dyes. I would use the siphon feed one, which would be, let's go overhead. This little guy here. Much easier to clean.
Yeah,
than
and you can
the-
leave the dyes in the can and cap it.
Yeah, I have other jars for it with the dyes already in them, and then just mark the lid for what they are.
Yeah, the dyes can be shot right out of the airbrush, right straight out of the airbrush
Yeah.
from the can too. The chestnut spirit stains, they work great right from the airbrush.
Well,
So
I
some
mean,
of those
any
pieces,
of
those
them
pieces
would.
well, some of those pieces I showed last week were done with the spirit stains. So
Yeah. I mean, theirs is pretty consistent now. I've gotten some of the artisan stains from craft supplies, and they seem like they're pretty good too. I don't have any issues with them.
yeah, as long as they're not clogging things, you can just go for it. Yep.
Well, I mean, all that stuff's alcohol based, so they're very thin.
Yeah, it should be then. If
Yeah.
it's not, then you need to reevaluate it before you even bother putting it in. So does anybody have any questions or comments for Kurt on tonight's demo?
You said a cup of tea. Would that be a cup of tequila?
Nope. Jimmy Clues is an Englishman. Englishmen drink tea, hot tea. Because that's the first thing I'd say to him. I said, "You talking about iced tea?" "No, man, we drink hot tea. Iced tea's for wimps." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Then I won't tell you I had a 20-ounce bottle on the way here, but okay."
Would you show us
Right.
the example piece with the finial, just so we can see kind of where you're aiming at? There we go. Thank you. Just to get an idea of proportion.
Make it up as you go.
Yeah.
This foot's considerably smaller than the top, which I think looks good in that situation. Don't try and make the bowl part of it as deep as what you possibly can. Doesn't matter if this piece is not going to be heavy no matter what you do to it.
Oh, you don't have to. I was just seeing what.
And like I said, I did this part, the lid ass backwards. I normally would grab a hold of that like I did, put a tenon out here so that I can do the bottom. And the bottom is complete before I ever flip it around. And yes,
Right.
that bead right there is what I held on to on the inside.
What
You don't-
what did you finish that with to get that interior of the bowl so shiny?
What do you think?
It's Parfix
Lacquer, I bet.
3408.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that Parfix?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
The whole thing's done with that.
Very
I'll
nice.
tell
Thank
you
you.
what,
Now, the inside there might be, you can also use some of the abrasive paste over on the Parfix once it cures.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But I have the buffing balls and that'll get in there and do that. The hardest part to try and get super shiny is these wings.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do have some
Yep.
teeny tiny little buffing wheels that I can do them with. But yeah, there's another piece of that curly maple.
That's a
finished-
nice curl on that.
Finished natural.
That
It's
is
almost
nice.
it's almost just as good to finish them natural. It almost shows more of it, but
Yeah.
takes the right piece of wood. And don't ask me what the finial is. That was something I got somewhere. It's dark in color, put it that way. I'm not one to buy. It might have been some Brazilian ebony that I got somewhere cheap. But something like that, if I was to do that today, I normally don't go spend that kind of money on things like that because I can just take and make the finial, sand it. I can spray a coat of the black shellac on there, and if it's not super smooth, smooth it up. A couple coats of lacquer, which is all done out of the airbrush. I spray lacquer out of that airbrush too, a water-based lacquer. So
Very
you
cool.
can